The town called her a liar. The rancher said nothing, until the truth cost him everything. Calico Ridge, late afternoon, autumn of 1888. The wind had that crisp bite that hinted at winter, but the dust in the marketplace hung thick and still. What was normally the busiest day of the week, Market Day, had become something darker. The center of town was packed with farmers, traders, wives with baskets, and old men who thought they had seen every wrong a human could commit, and now they gathered for a different spectacle. In the center of the square stood Elsie Ray Holloway, her wrists tied tightly behind her back, ankles secured in iron shackles. Her dark hair was tangled and soiled, her once clean dress faded and stained from travel. In the sharp light of the afternoon, a crude sign hung from her neck, words scrawled in rough ink. Con woman, liar, baby thief. The circle of townsfolk around her was dense. Some pointed and sneered, others folded their arms and watched in grim silence. A few older women murmured prayers under their breath, though their eyes held judgment more than mercy. A stout woman in a faded bonnet flicked the rind of an apple at Elsie's feet and snarled, "You'd steal a newborn from its own kin? What sort of creature are you?" The din of voices rose, rumors of a vanished family, the Montroses, wealthy landowners who had simply disappeared weeks before, had spread like wildfire through Calico Ridge. Then, locals had stumbled upon a newborn child in a lonely shack by the creek, with Elsie found inside, tending to her as though she were the child's own mother. It seemed a benevolent act at first, but when Elsie failed to produce any witness or document beyond her own word, suspicion wrapped itself around her like iron bands. She claimed the Montroses had entrusted their child to her. She said they gave her a letter, a document granting temporary guardianship. No one in that square had seen that letter. And in a place where land, legacy, and lineage counted for everything, the simplest explanation became the most damning. She had fabricated the story to seize the child and claim the Montrose estate. Elsie stood there without outcry or protest. She did not beg, she did not wail, she did not shout that she was innocent. She simply looked ahead, her face pale but composed. That silence made some believe she was guilty. An innocent woman would fight, they said. An innocent woman would scream. At the edge of the crowd stood Jonas Vance, 32 years old, lean from years on the Blackstone Ranch, boots still streaked with morning mud. He stood with his hands in his coat pockets, not speaking, not condemning. His expression was unreadable in the harsh light. He was the only man there who had seen a different side of Elsie, late one stormy night 6 weeks earlier, when she came to his door, soaked and desperate, holding a crumpled piece of paper and begging him to read it. He remembered the letter clearly, now folded and hidden in his private chest back at the ranch. He was the only witness who could corroborate her story, but to produce it would mean revealing more than her innocence. The letter spoke of fear and haste. The Montroses had fled the law after some shady land deals fell apart. In it was a plea, an explicit request that Elsie care for their infant daughter until the turmoil passed. And buried in the margin was a name that made Jonas's stomach drop, his own. The letter hinted that he was the illegitimate son of Mr. Montrose, a truth he had never shared with anyone. If Jonas brought the letter forward, if he confirmed it was real, he would be revealing his own origin, unraveling every bit of respectability he had painstakingly earned in Calico Ridge. He had worked the Blackstone Ranch from dawn to dusk, built a reputation on honest labor, refused to lean on family ties even if they existed. So he stood in the back and watched. He did not shout, he did not intervene. And the townspeople jeered and judged her. Elsie's silence did not make her appear innocent. It made her appear guiltier still. And Jonas's silence bore witness not to doubt, but to fear. In that moment, While the sun beat down and dust swirled at their feet, a woman stood condemned, not because of evidence, but because no one would speak the truth. The rain that night was soft but steady, soaking the dirt road that led from the chapel to the edge of Blackstone Ranch. The horses had long been stabled, the lanterns dimmed. Jonas Vance had just finished his supper when the knock came. He opened the door to find a figure barely standing. Elsie Ray Holloway, drenched to the skin, clutched something close to her chest. Her dark hair stuck to her face, and her boots sloshed when she stepped into the light. Without waiting for invitation, she looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "They told me to trust you," she whispered. "They wrote it in the letter, and they left the baby with me." She handed him the bundle she carried. It was a child, no older than a few weeks, silent, warm, asleep. Jonas blinked, but before he could say a word, she reached into her coat and brought out a folded letter, soggy with rain. The paper trembled in her hand. She passed it to him with quiet urgency. He took it and stepped inside. The fire crackled low in the hearth. Jonas crouched near it, trying to warm and dry the letter without tearing it. The ink had run in places, but the signature at the bottom remained legible: Eleanor Montrose. He read the letter in silence. Eleanor's words were hurried but clear. She wrote that her family had been forced to flee Calico Ridge to escape the impending investigation into their land deals. She expressed her gratitude to Elsie, entrusting her with the care of their newborn daughter. And, in the final lines, Eleanor revealed something Jonas had never spoken aloud, that he was the illegitimate son of Everett Montrose, a truth buried deep beneath the town's polite fictions. Jonas's jaw tightened. His fingers curled around the letter. He looked up at Elsie, who stood there soaked and waiting. Her face was calm, but her eyes begged him to believe her, to do something. But Jonas didn't move. He said nothing. He asked her to wait outside for a moment and returned to the room alone. From a drawer, he pulled a second letter, the duplicate Elsie had brought as a precaution, and stared at it. Then, wordlessly, he struck a match and burned it. The flames licked at the edges, curling the paper into blackened scraps before it disappeared into ash. He kept the original, tucking it away in a wooden box under lock and key, not for safekeeping, not for justice, but for fear. "I can't let this come out," he whispered to himself. "If the town finds out I'm a Montrose bastard, they'll take everything, my land, my name." He told himself he was preserving order, that if the Montroses returned, the truth would sort itself out, that it wasn't his responsibility to fix what someone else had broken. But each day after, he found himself riding past the old chapel where the baby had been taken. And each night, he heard more talk. They said Elsie had gone mad, made up stories, invented a letter no one had ever seen. They said she'd been stripped of her shoes and locked without food. They said she hadn't shed a single tear. Jonas said nothing, but he remembered the rain, the trust in her voice, the way she looked at him like he was the last honest man left. And now, in the silence of his barn, or in the creak of saddle leather on an early ride, he saw her face. He had taken her trust and buried it beneath his fear. She had given him the truth, and he had chosen not to speak. Now, they called her a liar, and she stood alone. And Jonas Vance, the only man who knew she wasn't, felt the weight of his silence grow heavier with every passing hour. The courthouse had never been so full. Chairs scraped against wooden floors, hats were removed, whispers flew like sparks from a brush fire. The town council had called an emergency hearing after news spread that Jonas Vance, owner of Blackstone Ranch, intended to speak on behalf of Elsie Ray Holloway. Jonas stood at the center of the room, flanked by two deputies who had not yet decided whether to guard him or arrest him. He wore no hat. His shirt was clean but crumpled, as if he had dressed quickly, without thought. In his hand was a folded letter, now dried, pressed between waxed linen to preserve the fragile ink. He held it with both hands, like scripture. "I have something to read," he said, his voice even. A letter written by Eleanor Montrose 3 weeks before she and her husband fled this town. A hush fell. Jonas unfolded the paper and read aloud, line by line. The words rang out, clear and slow. A mother's voice entrusting her infant daughter to the care of Miss Elsie Holloway, praising her character, asking the town to protect her if the family should not return. The letter spoke of a land scheme gone wrong, a scandal they feared would ruin innocent lives, and their desperate plan to disappear. And then, at the very end, Eleanor wrote plainly, "Jonas Vance is to be trusted. He has more right to the Montrose name than most who carry it." A silence deeper than shock gripped the room. No one moved. Then the murmurs began. "He's claiming to be a Montrose?" someone muttered. "He's lying. He wants the land." A man stood up. Mr. Baylor, a trader known for his loud opinions and louder debts. "This is convenient, don't you think?" he barked. A bastard child comes forward with a miracle letter, just in time to save the woman he fancies. He's not proving her innocence. He's trying to steal a fortune. Jonas did not flinch. A woman near the back, Mrs. Stoddard, who ran the grocer, pointed a gloved finger toward Elsie. She fooled him. He's under her spell. Maybe she's carrying his child next. That drew laughter. Ugly. Sharp. Jonas raised his voice. "I'm not here to claim land. I'm here because I let a lie grow bigger than my fear." But no one listened. The mayor leaned forward. "Mr. Vance, without corroborating evidence, without the Montroses themselves, this letter could have been written by anyone. We cannot, we will not, let hearsay overturn the safety of this town." Elsie, seated in shackles near the rear door, did not cry. Her face remained expressionless, but her eyes, usually fierce and unwavering, dimmed. She looked at Jonas for a long time, then said quietly, "I told you. The truth can't save anyone, if they don't want it." Jonas opened his mouth, but couldn't find the words. He had braved humiliation, torn open a secret buried for decades, and placed it all in the hands of people who had already decided what to believe. And they didn't believe him. They believed she had seduced him. They believed the baby was a ploy. They believed that truth must look shiny and clean to be real. And Elsie was too quiet, too ragged, too stubborn. The council moved to postpone judgment. They would investigate further. They would deliberate. But in that room, filled with sweat and suspicion, the verdict was already written in the sneers and sidelong glances. Jonas stepped down from the stand. No one clapped. No one nodded. Even the deputies looked away. He passed by Elsie, and for the first time, she didn't look up. And in that stillness, Jonas Vance realized it was